Today I'm going to talk about what I do before breeding season, and I'm going to give a few tips that will really make breeding season a success. As you can see, there's one of my breeding sections, and I have the stock cocks with the last bunch of laid hatches that they raised. I always leave the last babies of the year in with the stock cocks. The young hens cause the fertility of the cocks to stay up. It adds a little bit of excitement to the breeding loft, and it keeps the cocks going throughout the winter. And the young cocks, it causes a little bit of fighting, and it keeps the breeding cocks on their toes. Now, one important thing that I always do before breeding season is I put the lights on. 2 weeks before pairing, I will turn on the lights, and I'll leave the lights on 24 hours a day up until about April. So the birds during the breeding season, not only for the 2 weeks prior to breeding, the lights will cause the hormones to go up, the birds will think it's springtime, and they'll be ready to breed. The body weight will drop because once the hormones start pumping again, the birds feel it's springtime, and they won't eat very much. So this is all part of the process. Turn the lights on 2 weeks before pairing. I also like to vaccinate for PMV and Salmonella. I'm a big fan of vaccinating the pigeons. I worry about PMV. I like to vaccinate at that point for PMV and Salmonella. And then when the babies are born, they pass on the immunity to the chicks. It's very helpful. Also, what I do is I spray the birds for parasites and I worm them. I use a moxidectin. I'll put a link in the description to the moxidectin wormer and how I use it. But I use the moxidectin. I like to worm them twice, maybe 6 weeks before breeding and, a couple weeks before breeding. And it wipes out all internal parasites, and that product also eliminates external parasites, which is quite interesting. I do have a couple old hens in with the breeding cocks that did not lay or had trouble laying last year, so I left them with the cocks all winter to see if they'll lay this winter. Something I do throughout the year, but especially before breeding season, is you want to stimulate springtime, you want to stimulate fertility. As you can see, I've got an arthritic pigeon there. He's got one arthritic leg. Too bad, he's a really good pigeon. But you want to stimulate springtime. And what happens at springtime, there's a lot of grass starts to grow, a lot of seeds start to bud, and the pigeons start eating green. So what I do is I start adding rabbit pellets. I give them as a supplement, cocks and hens, rabbit pellets, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, just like maybe a half a coffee can full, a few times per week leading up to breeding. And then I do it right through breeding season, and it's really helpful for the birds. Now, the number one ingredient I like to find is alfalfa. So if you can buy the rabbit pellets with the first ingredient is alfalfa, that's the best type of rabbit pellet. I also make sure they have plenty of grits and minerals. I'll be really strict with adding the grits and minerals leading up to breeding and right through breeding season. As many of you know, the minerals are probably the most important part. You can get away with different types of feed, but if they have the minerals, the birds are going to have an excellent breeding season. And this second section here, we were over there, also has some laid hatch hens and a few laid hatch cocks. Keeps the activity going, keeps the pigeons excited, and it's very good for them to stimulate them throughout the breeding season. Now, you've turned on the lights, you've vaccinated the birds, you've wormed them. Pairing, I don't worry too much about pairing. This loft will be a free mate loft. We're going to add a section on the end over there. I'll have another breeding section. I keep some of my birds in Massachusetts where I have more opportunities to make certain pairings, but this will be a free mate loft. I like birds that pick their own mates. I also like pigeons to breed in a group environment. They're flock animals. They like living in a group. And you'll find that most of the time they'll pick their own mates. Now, what am I feeding them now? Many ask. My birds in the off season and through the winter, are on chicken pellets. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's just a like 16% protein chicken pellet in one feeder. And in this feeder, I have whole corn. I know, you can feed the grain, but if you want to save some money, this is a perfectly fine mix. And I feed it off season for the pigeons. Once they're finished with the body molt, all the birds go on to corn and pellets, and they do great. If you handle these pigeons, the feather is like silk on my breeding cocks. The health and condition is excellent. Many of you ask, well, what about medications before breeding season? No, nothing. I do not medicate the pigeons. I haven't medicated or flock treated the pigeons since 2013. I will individually treat, but if the birds are healthy, there's no need to medicate pigeons. Look at them. You can see the health and the condition of these pigeons. There's nothing they need. They're nutritionally complete. Their immune systems are strong. I don't believe in medicating for the sake of medicating. A natural product I do use and I do love, and I'll probably put the birds on this maybe for a week or so before breeding and then a few days a week during breeding, is the Nubiotic oregano oil. It's an oregano and cinnamon oil. Terrific product. It's a natural, like, antibacteria, it has a lot of benefits in the pigeon's gut. It keeps them healthy. If you're trying to go antibiotic free, I suggest you switch the Nubiotic, and you could even do it 7 days a week. It's 1 ml to the gallon. I do love the product. I'll put a link in the description with my discount code, and you may want to give this a try. But this will be the so-called treatment before breeding, which will be just the oregano and cinnamon product. I will get very strict with the minerals. I'll bring in the brown mineral blocks, I like the mixed minerals, whether it's Jovati or there's all-in-one by Versailles. There's several. I buy it by the big bag. I use the pick pots. I use the magnesium blocks. I use the Belgian grit minerals. Most important for breeding are the minerals. My favorite is the Vita Mineral by Natural, the pink mineral. Keep the minerals in front of the birds at all times. Replenish them a few times a week. You'll raise beautiful, healthy babies. You can't go wrong if you keep the minerals in front of the birds. Plus, the breeders won't break down. You can breed right through the heat of the summer. If they're healthy, they have good immune systems, and you keep the minerals in front of the birds, they'll do very, very well right through the breeding season. But the minerals are the most important. Now, I also want to say I keep the chicken pellets in one feeder and the corn, the whole maize, or whole corn, we'd say, in the USA, in the other feeder. Once the babies hatch, I will switch that out. I will pull the corn, and I'll put a 16% protein mix feed in that feeder. I'll keep the chicken pellets. It's more of a supplement. They don't eat many, but that feeder will be switched out to something like a, Versailles Champion or similar. So they'll have the option of raising the babies. They'll have the grain feeder and they'll have the pellet feeder. I would say they eat about 95% grain and 5% pellets. The pellets are more of a mineral and protein supplement. Now, during the week in the water, as we touched on the Nubiotic, I usually like to give the breeders vitamins 1 day a week. I like the horse vitamin red cell for the iodine. I will give that probably, once a week, 1 teaspoon to the gallon. I also will buy a chicken vitamin electrolyte and, give that now and again, maybe every other week for a day. I make it very weak. That stuff is highly concentrated. You don't want to make anything too strong. And then I'll use the Nubiotic oregano product a few days a week. And it covers all your bases. You don't really have to worry too much about the pigeons if you're doing those few simple things. So they have the grain, they have the chicken pellets, they have the minerals, and the Nubiotic with some vitamins in the water now and again. And you should be on the right track. That's really all they need. Now, my lights, I don't have lights in this loft. I don't have electricity, but being in Florida, I don't think I'm going to have a problem with pairing. If I had lighting, I would leave the lighting on until April, 24 hours a day. so they could pump their babies anytime they want. It really is beneficial. If the breeders want to feed at 3 o'clock in the morning, they can feed at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you have the ability to put in the lights, use that. Put on the lights. The other thing, which I forgot to mention about the lights, buy the natural daylight full spectrum bulbs. Put the same lighting in that is in the sun. The sun gives off a full spectrum light. So do that. Use the full spectrum bulbs. They're a little more expensive. The birds will get some vitamin D from the bulb. It'll be very, very beneficial for the birds to be under the full spectrum lights. It's just a natural lighting for them. So if you're going to do it, you don't have to do it, but I recommend it's extremely beneficial. I hope you like my videos. Please subscribe and share with your friends, and put a comment down. Let me know what you do, and also what country you're from. I'd be interested to see where everybody is watching my videos from. I'm in Florida right now. I do have birds in Massachusetts, which keeps this game a little bit easier for me. I have them in 2 locations. My brother is a really solid pigeon fancier now. He's been a huge help for me. Bit of a recap on the video. Lights on 2 weeks before breeding. Use the daylight, natural, full spectrum lights if possible. Worm the birds twice using the moxidectin. I'll put a link below. Also, if possible, all the possible grits, minerals in front of the birds. Very, very important. You want them nutritionally complete. I like to use an oregano product. I do not medicate before breeding. It's unnecessary. You're better off going with natural health. You'll build much stronger pigeons. And then keep the minerals in front of the birds at all times for the babies. Keep the lights on until spring. Then you can shut the lights off because the days are long enough. And you'll have a very, very successful breeding season. This is Frank McLaughlin, McLaughlin Lofts. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll keep them coming, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much.